Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Rwanda regrets the UK suspension of some aid over Kigali's role in DR Congo's brutal conflict. The prosecutor for the International Criminal Court, meanwhile, lands in the Congolese capital as communities upended by the M23's recent rebel takeover try to reintroduce some normality into their lives. Also, as the dangers deepen for everyone caught up in Sudan's war, Médecins Sans Frontières aid teams say that they've been forced to stop work in Zamzam, the famine-struck North Darfur displacement camp, embodying some of the worst examples of the human cost of the conflict. And proving that conversation can be the cure and that sharing is caring, an enormously successful example of the reach and impact of local radio helps rural communities in Madagascar band together to solve a multitude of common problems. But first, the UK is pulling some bilateral aid to Rwanda over its involvement in the brutal conflict in neighbouring DR Congo. Kigali says that it regrets Downing Street's Tuesday announcement. Despite Rwanda's denials, the UN has shared evidence of its backing of the M23 rebels, whose ramped-up offensive in eastern DR Congo has cost around 7,000 lives this year. About 4,000 Rwandan troops are believed to be fighting alongside the Congolese militia, which have seized the cities of Bukavu and Goma. Burundian troops continued to deploy in support of the Congolese army on Tuesday as the M23 approached the border town of Uvira, not far from the Burundian capital. African regional blocs, meanwhile, have appointed former leaders from Kenya, Ethiopia and Nigeria to try and facilitate peace talks. On the ground, civilians trying to survive the complexities of the conflict are still striving for normality amidst the chaos. Our Catherine Norris-Trent brings us more from Kinshasa.
We see the M23 clearly trying to show that they are putting in place administrations in the towns that they have taken in the east of the DRC. They held a public meeting in the town of Sake, which is around 30 kilometers from Goma. This Tuesday, the local population was called to attend. And then you had the governor and the vice governor under the rebellion, of course not recognized by the government here in Kinshasa, speaking to the population and telling them that they were going to repair essential services such as water and electricity supplies, which were damaged during the fighting. So they're trying to show that they have a hold on the situation in those towns. That's despite the fact that the fighting is continuing in the area. The M23, backed by Rwandan troops, are continuing their offensive. And the UN says more than 50,000 people have fled the zone so far. We also saw in the town of Bukavu children going back to school as of this Monday on the orders of the M23. And this Tuesday, local sources said that the pupils were still turning up to school. And some of the parents and the teachers in the town of Bukavu spoke out to the cameras.
We have agreed to send the children to school for their well-being. We have accepted and taken responsibility because we are their parents, their guardians, and it is up to us to take care of them. However, we do not know who made the request for the children to return to school. Who will assume responsibility? Who will take care of the teachers? Will we be brought back to square one?
Of course, after the recent events, it's normal that not everything is fully operational on the first day, but we have begun. Regarding how classes will go, we will discuss it with the authorities.
Meanwhile, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, has arrived in Kinshasa, and he gave a stark warning on arrival, saying that no one, no armed groups, no armed forces, nor their allies, interesting that he added that in, had a blank check, and that they must all respect international humanitarian law. He's carrying out an investigation which was already launched in 2023 at the demand of Congolese authorities. Of course, that will be very complicated given the security situation there in the east of the DRC. And also, people in his entourage are suggesting that the ICC would be favourable to setting up a tribunal specially for cases in the DRC.
Catherine Norris-Trent there. Now, in Sudan, Doctors Without Borders has suspended work of its aid teams around the famine-struck Zamzam camp in North Darfur because of the deepening dangers of the civil war. The RSF paramilitary and army have been fighting since April 2023. Clashes continue, as does the shifting of lines. On Tuesday, a military plane crashed in Omdurman, the twin city of the capital, Khartoum. This week, the army broke a 2-year RSF siege of the strategic city of El Obeid. Meanwhile, the central city of Wad Madani was taken back from the RSF paramilitary fighters just last month and appears to already be showing tentative signs of recovery.
In Wad Madani's central market, clients and vendors enthusiastically bargained over piles of fresh produce and spices. Completely deserted only weeks ago, the streets of the central Sudanese city were slowly limping back to life.
The city is safe now, the market's running smoothly and transportation as well. But it's still missing one thing. The people need to come back to their state.
The capital of Al Jazeera state, Wad Madani was captured by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in December 2023 after weeks of intense fighting, forcing most of the population to flee. Just a few hundred meters away from the market, gutted buildings and piles of rubble still stood witness to the brutality of the war. The city was recaptured by the army in January, sparking wild celebrations, and while civilians have slowly begun to return, many challenges remain, including restoring electricity and running water.
We're still relying on generators because there's no power. Our surgical supplies are nearly expired, and we need more anesthetic equipment.
Despite a recent series of military gains by the Sudanese army, a return to normal still appears out of reach for most of the 12 million people that have been displaced by the ongoing conflict.
A well-known journalist appeared in court in Zimbabwe on Tuesday after an interview he did with a critic of President Emerson Mnangagwa earlier this year landed him in jail. Police launched a manhunt for Blessed Malanga after he sat down with Blessed Geza earlier this year. Sharon Mazingaizu tells us more.
Blessed Mhlanga is a journalist who was doing his job. Mhlanga has been accused of broadcasting interviews where war veterans and ZANU-PF committee members were calling for President Mnangagwa to step down. Mhlanga is facing criminal charges of inciting public violence. The ruling of this case has been postponed until the 27th of February, which means Mhlanga will remain in custody until the 27th of February when he comes back to court. Mhlanga did the interviews with the war veterans in January and February. Earlier in the week, the police issued statements seeking for the whereabouts of Mhlanga. On Monday, he turned himself in and was detained. The war veterans have been critics of President Emerson Mnangagwa. The police have also said the war veterans leader is facing criminal charges of undermining the authority of the president.
Well, proving that conversation can be a cure, in Madagascar, local radio has helped rural communities band together to solve a multitude of problems, from tackling crime to boosting crop yields. Gael Borgia has more.
Jean-Cri knows this slogan by heart. Over the past 4 years, Radio Fivoirana has become the main source of news for the residents of this small village. The station serves as a community-based warning system against local bandits known as Dahalu, who have a habit of violent looting. 2 years ago, they burned down Jean-Cri's house and attempted to kidnap him. His wife died in the smoke. Today, residents can call Radio Fivoirana day and night to warn of attacks.
It's much safer now. Thanks to this radio station, the community comes together when there is an attack. This comforts us a lot and gives us courage in the face of danger.
This revolution was inspired by one man, Antoine Radzerisson. The 40-year-old agricultural engineer spent his savings to build this studio. A few square meters and a dose of genius has transformed the lives of many. Antoine regularly broadcasts advice on livestock farming and crop calendars.
Radio is the fastest way to foster development. One of the main obstacles to development in rural areas is a lack of information. This means that radio is the best method for improving the lives of farmers and for farming communities.
Ever since the station was launched, Lantu's life and the lives of 50 women who are part of her association have been transformed. Thanks to Antoine's advice, Lantu started growing these chilies, known as bird beaks. Before, she didn't even know they existed. The crop is in high demand and her income has doubled in the space of a year.
In the past, we would grow crops without any real prospect. Prices were very low and there was no development. Ever since Antoine came, our situation has improved and we have been able to buy a television.
Riding a wave of popularity, Antoine Radzerisson ran for office last year and won a seat in parliament. He used the radio to tackle electoral manipulation by the traditional parties.
In one commune, gifts were handed out during the election campaign. Things like sarongs and T-shirts. But the population sent these goods back to where they came from because they'd learned that this was not good behaviour and understood it as a form of electoral corruption.
Antoine has received numerous death threats as well as threats to close the station, which now counts at least 2 million listeners every day.
For Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Take care.